volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. An Inland Voyage by Robert Louis Stevenson. Pont sur Sambre, the Travelling Merchant. Like the lackeys in Molière's farce, when the true noblemen broke in on their high life below stairs, we were destined to be confronted with a real pedlar. To make the lesson still more poignant for fallen gentlemen like us, he was a pedlar of infinitely more consideration than the sort of scurvy fellows we were taken for, like a lion among mice, or a ship of war bearing down upon two cockboats. Indeed, he did not deserve the name of pedlar at all. He was a travelling merchant. I suppose it was about 8:30 when this worthy, Monsieur Hector Gilliard of Maubert, turned up at the alehouse door in a tilt cart drawn by a donkey and cried cheerily on the inhabitants. He was a lean, nervous, flibberty-gibbet of a man, with something of the look of an actor, and something the look of a horse-jockey. He had evidently prospered without any of the favours of education, for he adhered with a stern simplicity to the masculine gender, and in the course of the evening passed off some fancy futures in a very florid style of architecture. With him came his wife, a comely young woman, with her hair tied in a yellow handkerchief, and their little son, a little fellow of 4 in a blouse and military kepi. It was notable that the child was many degrees better dressed than either of the parents. We were informed that he was already at a boarding school, but the holidays having just commenced, he was off to spend them with his parents on a cruise. An enchanting holiday occupation, was it not? To travel all day with father and mother in the tilt cart full of countless treasures, the green country rattling by on either side, and the children in all the villages contemplating him with envy and wonder. It is better fun during the holidays to be the son of a travelling merchant than the son and heir to the greatest cotton spinner in creation. And as for being a reigning prince, indeed I never saw one if it was not Master Gilliard. While Monsieur Hector and the son of the house were putting up the donkey, and getting all the valuables under lock and key, the landlady warmed up the remains of our beefsteak, and fried the cold potatoes in slices, and Madame Gilliard set herself to waken the boy, who had come far that day, and was peevish and dazzled by the light. He was no sooner awake than he began to prepare himself for supper by eating galette, unripe pears, and cold potatoes, with, so far as I could judge, positive benefit to his appetite. The landlady, fired with motherly emulation, awoke her own little girl, and the two children were confronted. Master Gilliard looked at her for a moment, very much as a dog looks at his own reflection in a mirror before he turns away. He was at that time absorbed in the galette. His mother seemed crestfallen that he should display so little inclination towards the other sex, and expressed her disappointment with some candour and a very proper reference to the influence of years. Sure enough, a time will come when he will pay more attention to the girls and think a great deal less of his mother. Let us hope that she will like it as well as she seems to fancy. But it is odd enough, the very women who profess most contempt for mankind as a sex seem to find even its ugliest particulars rather lively and high-minded in their own sons. The little girl looked longer and with more interest, probably because she was in her own house, while he was a traveller and accustomed to strange sights. And besides, there was no galette in the case with her. All the time of supper, there was nothing spoken of but my young lord. The two parents were both absurdly fond of their child. Monsieur kept insisting on his sagacity, how he knew all the children at school by name, and when this utterly failed on trial, how he was cautious and exact to a strange degree, and if asked anything he would sit and think, and if he did not know it, my faith, he wouldn't tell you at all. Foi, il ne vous le dira pas, which is certainly a very high degree of caution. At intervals, Monsieur Hector would appeal to his wife, with his mouth full of beefsteak, as to the little fellow's age at such or such a time when he had said or done something memorable, and I noticed that Madame usually pooh-poohed these inquiries. She herself was not boastful in her vein, but she never had her fill of caressing the child, and she seemed to take a gentle pleasure in recalling all that was fortunate in his little existence. No schoolboy could have talked more of the holidays which were just beginning, and less of the black school time which must inevitably follow after. She showed with a pride perhaps part mercantile in origin, his pockets preposterously swollen with tops and whistles and string. When she called at a house in the way of business, it appeared he kept her company, and whenever a sale was made, received a sou out of the profit. Indeed, they spoiled him vastly, these two good people. But they had an eye to his manners for all that, and reproved him for some little faults in breeding which occurred from time to time during supper. On the whole, I was not much hurt at being taken for a pedlar. I might think that I ate with greater delicacy, or that my mistakes in French belonged to a different order, but it was plain that these distinctions would be thrown away upon the landlady and the two labourers. In all essential things, we and the Gilliards cut very much the same figure in the alehouse kitchen. Monsieur Hector was more at home, indeed, and took a higher tone with the world, but that was explicable on the grounds of his driving a donkey-cart, while we poor bodies tramped afoot. I dare say the rest of the company thought us dying with envy, though in no ill sense, to be as far up in the profession as the new arrival. And of one thing I am sure, that everyone thawed and became more humanized and conversable as soon as these innocent people appeared upon the scene. I would not very readily trust the travelling merchant with any extravagant sum of money, but I am sure his heart was in the right place. In this mixed world, if you can find one or two sensible places in a man, above all, if you should find a whole family living together on such pleasant terms, you may surely be satisfied and take the rest for granted. Or, what is a great deal better, boldly make up your mind that you can do perfectly well without the rest, and that 10,000 bad traits cannot make a single good one any the less good. It was getting late. Monsieur Hector lit a stable lantern, and went off to his cart for some arrangements, and my young gentleman proceeded to divest himself of the better part of his raiment, and play gymnastics on his mother's lap, and thence on to the floor, with accompaniment of laughter. "Are you going to sleep alone?" asked the servant lass. "There's little fear of that," said Master Gilliard. "You sleep alone at school," objected his mother. Come, you must be a man." But he protested that school was a different matter from the holidays, that there were dormitories at school, and silenced the discussion with kisses, his mother smiling, no one better pleased than she. There certainly was, as he phrased it, very little fear that he should sleep alone, for there was but one bed for the trio. We, on our part, had firmly protested against one man's accommodation for two, and we had a double-bedded pen in the loft of the house, furnished, besides the beds, with exactly 3 hat-pegs and 1 table. there was not so much as a glass of water, but the window would open by good fortune. Some time before I fell asleep, the loft was full of the sound of mighty snoring, the Gilliards and the labourers and the people of the inn, all in it, I suppose, with one consent. The young moon outside shone very clearly over Pont-sur-Sambre, and down upon the alehouse, where all we pedlars were abed. End of section 7. Reading by Alan Mapstone in Oxford, England.